Today we're honored to welcome Stuart Perrin to the show today. I'm very excited to have him on. He is author of the Rudra Meditation, and basically he talks about very important topics to kind of cultivate our mind, right? Meditation is such an important tool in today's world, and really learning how to master that is such a gift we can give to ourselves, right? It's a practice, and we can cultivate it and expand on it every single day. He has a lot of knowledge in this space. He has an amazing story, and today we're going to walk away with things that we can implement to basically take control of our minds and be more calm and centered in our lives today. So how you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Yeah, very excited about this, and I'm happy to have you here. So very curious to hear your story and how you got into meditation and spirituality and how you're helping people today.
Well, my story, I've been telling it a lot because I've been doing a number of podcasts, and everybody asks me the same question. They want to know my story. And it's a very interesting story. I mean, look, it started for me when I was 16 years old. And it started for me because of a very traumatic experience I had as a young man. I was in Florida with my mother and my sister. We were on vacation, and we get a phone call that my father was very sick in the hospital. And we flew back to New York. I was living in actually the Bronx at the time in New York. I was born and raised there. And we went to the hospital. My father was lying in bed with about 106-degree fever. He was shaking. He was almost like in a coma. He didn't recognize my mother, my sister, or myself. And this went on for about a week, and it was very traumatic for a person of 16 years old to go through this with a person who was very dear to him. And just before he died, I went into his hospital room. He was lying in bed in a state of total serenity, a state of total inner peace. It's like he had let go of all of life's dramas. And I looked into his eyes, I could see 1,000 miles. The room was, had an energy in it I had never experienced before, a calmness and something deeply spiritual. And I had never experienced that before. There was light in the room. I took his hand and I asked him, "Do you know me?" And he said, yes. He shook his head, yes. Anyway, I got up and left the room for a few minutes, and I bumped into his nurse. His nurse told me something that changed my life. She said to me, to her experience, and she worked in, the oncological, the cancer ward, and people dying all the time. And just before people die, they go into this state of inner peace. And it's like they've surrendered everything, and they finally kind of accepted themselves and life, and somehow all the tension was gone. And when she told me this, I thought, why did my father have to live 49 years to experience this, literally hours before he died? How come he never learned how to do this while he was alive? And it transformed my life. I was a fairly decent basketball player when I was younger, and I thought of college and scholarships and maybe becoming a professional of some sort. But I started reading books on Buddhism and Hinduism, and I started reading books on, esoteric books on mystical things and the Kabbalah and all kinds of books like that I was reading. And I, from this kind of, lower middle class kid growing up in the Bronx, I became kind of a hippie and looking for some kind of purpose for my own life, which I never did before that. And it took 9 years. I went traveling half around the world looking for somebody who could teach me how to do this, because I knew how upset and I knew how crazy even as a young man, I knew how introverted I was, how much tension I had in myself. And I knew that it would be impossible for me to do this for myself. But I also could sense that somewhere in the world I would meet somebody who could teach me how to do this, how to find a state of inner peace. I didn't have to wait 2 hours before I was going to die, to find this state of inner well-being. And the incredible thing, after traveling literally half around the world, I was all over Europe and Africa. I was always on my way to India, thinking I would meet a Swami. I found this teacher in my hometown. I came back to New York and I found him. And I was in Paris, living in Paris. I was broke. I had no money. And I just got in touch with a friend of mine. And I asked him, can you please send me a plane ticket to come back to America? The next day, or a couple of days, I went to the American Express in Paris and there was a plane ticket waiting for me. Flew back to the States. I was living on the floor of this friend of mine's apartment. I had no money. I didn't have a job. I had nothing. And he said to me one evening, let's go out and have some dinner. I said, great. So we went out. There was a restaurant in Greenwich Village that we really liked. And we were walking down 7th Avenue South. And we came to an Oriental art shop, a shop I had walked past probably 500 times and never went in. And this friend of mine said to me, looking in the window, he said, you love this stuff, Stuart. And I did. I really used to feel a profound connection with Asian art, with Tibet, especially Hindu and Buddhist, Tibetan and Indian things. And I said, Charlie, I'm broke. What the hell am I going to do in there? This stuff is like museum quality. It costs a fortune. He said, it doesn't cost a look. And wow, I walked into the store with him. Standing in the middle of the store was a man, and the energy coming out of him was so powerful. And it was like the same energy I saw coming out of my father just before he passed on. The peace coming out of him, the light coming out of him. And I was attracted to this person, literally like a magnet. I didn't see anything else in the shop. I walked up to him, and he started showing me pictures of himself studying with a guru or a swami in India. And he told me about what he taught, and he said to me, if you want to study with me, come back here tomorrow night at 5 o'clock. On the way out of the shop, I looked back, and he was still standing there, and I saw that light, and I saw that serenity that the last time I had seen anything like it was when my father died. And I said, Stuart, I said to this friend of mine, Charlie, I said, I don't know what happened in there, Charlie, but I got to go back and see this guy. There's something there that I need to learn about my life from this person. Anyway, we went out and had dinner and came back to his apartment. And he was living in a tenement in Chelsea, which at that time was basically a slum. And, one of these $40 a month apartments that in the 60s you'd move into to get out of your family and to begin your life. Bathtub in the kitchen, toilet in the hall. We coming up the stairs, and there's a guy named Ed Borden who said, how would you like to come into my apartment and have some tea? So he said, great, Ed, we'll come. We went into his apartment. As I live and breathe, he must have had like a $500,000 Oriental art collection in this tenement apartment in Manhattan. And I said to him, Ed, where did you get this stuff? He said, there's a guy in Greenwich Village named Rudy who runs an art gallery. He was the person I had met an hour before in that shop. And I said to myself, Stuart, the gods are talking to you. Once in your life, listen. Once in your life, let them guide you. Don't know better. Next day I went down to this person's shop, and he showed me a breathing technique and invited me to come to his class in meditation. We walked across Manhattan together, and we went to his meditation room, and there must have been 20 or 30 people there that were doing meditation with him. And he showed me exactly what I was looking for. I mean, I wasn't born from a lotus leaf in the Himalaya mountains. I wasn't born in a cave, in the Himalaya. I wasn't born in a monastery. And I knew, Stuart, you were born in literally the slums of the Bronx, the Southeast Bronx. I wasn't born to live in monasteries or ashrams or places that are supposed to be holy. I was born to find out how to transform life into something sacred. And what this man taught me was a way to do this. He taught me how to use my breath properly. He taught me how to use my mind properly. He taught me how to develop inside myself a chakra system of energy centers that were a direct link between me and higher creative energy in the universe. And he taught me how essential it was to build foundation inside myself. Where the foundation was, how to open it, how to strengthen it, and how to truly become rooted in life. He taught me about the power of karma. Life as we live it actively in the world is an extreme, well, we all know this, just pick up the newspaper and read what goes on in this world. It's a very powerful energy. We need to be deeply rooted inside ourselves and grounded in order to deal with our karma and to deal with the activity that we must undergo in our daily life. He taught me how to connect with spirit. You know, spirit, everybody thinks it's kind of like a sweet hors d'oeuvre. Spirit is not. It's an extremely powerful energy. It's all of life. It's all of death. It's billions of years of energy, you know? Look, in the Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna reveals himself to Arjuna, it's as if the light of 1,000 suns suddenly appeared in the sky. The power of it is beyond all human comprehension. In order to receive that kind of energy and allow it to transform us inside, we need to be grounded. We need to be rooted. We have to have a very strong foundation. So between karma, the objective world that we live in, we're born into, and spirit, and then the third element, he taught me how to activate Kundalini. Kundalini is a force that is dormant at the base of a human being's spine. The activation of Kundalini creates a pathway to spiritual enlightenment. It's the soul that really moves up the spine to the crown chakra, and that opens and it attains a state of, it's like a marriage between the human soul and higher energy in the universe. Creates a state of enlightenment. Kundalini is a very powerful energy. So in order to deal with karma, with spirit, with freedom, Kundalini, becoming one with the universe, a human being has to build an incredible inner strength. And truly, that's what meditation is for. As I told you earlier, meditation is not a religion. Meditation is a craft that any human being can learn to build a system inside that is strong enough to receive spirit, to live in the world, in this world of tension and pressure and money and success and all the things that our family drives us to, how to live with that and deal with it without allowing it to suck us dry. And the third element is we're all born here to learn ultimately how to become spiritually enlightened, how to be the Messiah, how to become one with God. And when this man taught me the exercise he taught me, it was the beginnings for me. It was exactly, honestly, the exact thing I was looking for. Because I used to meet all these teachers and swamis and rishis and all kinds of people, like priests and rabbis, and I used to love peace and eat vegetables. And it never worked. And I would say to them, how do I get my mind to shut up? How do I get my emotions to quiet down? How do I get this sexual energy that's driving me crazy to get quiet inside myself? How do I get free of me? Because I am what is interfering with my connection to God or spirit or whatever one wants to call higher energy in the universe. And Rudy was the first one to show me a technique and a breathing technique that enabled me to do this. And the amazing thing about it is I learned, I used to spend a lot of time with him. And we would walk through Greenwich Village, we would walk, and he would, and I saw this man take a city like New York and transform it into something sacred. And I said, how did he do that? How does he do this? How did he build that kind of an inner life? I have to learn how to do it. I have to learn how to do it. And I spent 6 years studying with him, learning from him. And it wasn't easy. I mean, he used to kick me in the ass about half a dozen times a day and tell me, you got to get over yourself. You got to get past your ego. You got to get past this opinionated you that knows what's right about everything, and open and begin to listen to the greatest teacher there is in the world, and that is life. Life is the real guru. Not me, not my teacher Rudy, not Swami this one and Swami that one. My job and his job was to teach his students how to get strong enough to be able to embrace the most extraordinary guru that we have, which is life. It is there to teach us everything we need to learn about ourselves so that we can build a system that connects us with higher energy in the universe. Why are we born here? I mean, are we born here to make money? Look, I used to run an art business. I had to support myself, so I had to be in business. And I had very wealthy clients. I never met one of them that was happy. I never met one of them that I'd look in their eyes and I would see that twinkle, that joy, and that love inside them. It was always about how can I make more money, or buy the next object, or get the next thing that is supposed to make me happy, and never does. And what my teacher Rudy taught me, I'll tell you, I've told this story a lot, but it's such an interesting story. Well, after about 4 years of studying with him, he made me a teacher of his meditation practice. And he asked me to go to Texas, where he was starting a meditation center. and I went down there, and he said, Stuart, I would like you to start all kinds of centers down there, all over Texas. I would like you to bring this teaching there. So I started centers, one in Dallas, one in Nacogdoches, one in Austin, and one in Phoenix I started. And I was working about 18 hours a day. I was running the center where I was, and I was teaching a class in the morning, another one in the evening. I was running a business because I had to support myself. I was doing all of this, and it was about an 18-hour-a-day job. And I'll never forget, Rudy came down there, and I'm standing on, also I was teaching, I had classes going on in 2 different prisons in meditation, in this meditation that I learned from him. And at the universities and hospitals, it was just an unbelievable period of my life. He came down, they were standing on the porch of my house, and he said to me, Stuart, you're not working hard enough. So I looked at him. I started to laugh. I said, Rudy, what? What am I supposed to do? He said, buy that building. The building was a strip mall that was right next door to my house. I didn't even know it was for sale. And I said, Rudy, I have $600 in the bank. How am I going to buy that building? He said, anyone can do it with money. I needed that teaching because one of the great fears I had inside myself always, making money, fear of success, fearing having to deal with that aspect of life, and to do it consciously, to do it openly, and not to allow it to intimidate me and make me a frightened person. And he knew that. And he knew that if I would do this kind of thing, I would overcome that. A month later, I bought that building. And people say, well, how did you do it? I would sit and work on myself every day, deep, in every class, and I would draw higher energy that gave me the power to look through my fear and be able to raise the down payment, the deposit I needed in order to buy the building. It was extraordinary. And ultimately, it was that building that made it possible for me to move back to New York, where I had to start my life all over again. But, also some very interesting stories of things that happened to me. One of them was in India, that happened to me. But he taught me life is sacred, and if you're afraid of any aspect of it, if you fear it, you go into your day, you're crippled inside. You have to get over that. You have to learn how to be successful in the world and not allow the success to destroy your life. not to be sucked dry by your success, but to use the success. It's just energy. Use it to give life in the world, to give life to other people, make it possible for them to study in your meditation center, you know? And it not only opened me, but it opened what I was doing, the entire city that I was living in. It changed everything for me, changed everything. I overcame the deepest fear I had in myself, and that was truly to be successful in life, financially and in every way, and not allow it to destroy me, not allow it to make me greedy, not allow it to me to think constantly only about money, 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 but to do it because I needed, they say in the Bible, you give to Caesar what's Caesar's, you give to God what's God's. Caesar, the rent, Caesar was, the grocery store, Caesar was, and do it with gratitude that the grocery store is providing food instead of complaining about it. The landlord is providing a place to live. The bank is providing a mortgage. So instead of being unhappy about that and feeling tense and crazy, do it with an open heart. Be grateful that these things are being provided for you in life. That by that building, teaching from my teacher, Rudy, was extraordinary because it taught me how to get over these things that were crippling me inside. So all of that comes with karma, spirit, and ultimately Kundalini. And it really creates a whole person inside. And what I've learned in my life is the purpose of meditation is to truly develop this wholeness, this oneness inside us. A connection with spirit, and we have learned why we were born on the earth. And I always say, we're born on the earth just to become happy people. Happy people are enlightened people. But to find a happy person in this world, my God, I always kid around, so it would be easy to find the Holy Grail. And to find somebody that can live here with their heart open, and they're strong enough to sustain that inner openness, and to live that way. So, it's been a very interesting life. And the transformations that have taken place have done nothing but taught me how to do the kind of things I've just been talking about.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, man. It's an amazing story. It sounds like inner peace is really the key to living an excellent life, right? And you mentioned having all the success. It's about utilizing it and expanding it to be of service, right? It's like, and we focus on it tends to expand. So just using your energy for high purposes, that's really important.
Yes, I remember sitting in a satsang that a Indian Swami was giving. This was in upstate New York, and my teacher Rudy was sitting behind me, and the Swami was talking about the Guru is God. If you worship the Guru, you will find your spiritual enlightenment. My teacher Rudy was sitting behind me, and he whispered in my ear something I'll never forget. God is God. The best the Guru can be is the servant of God and the servant of his students. The humility of it was so profound, it went right through me. I have never forgotten it. The highest position you can attain in this planet is literally being a servant, surrendering inside, letting go. The humility involved in attaining that level of consciousness, the strength involved to do that, the innocence involved to do that. And in order to live with that kind of innocence, you have to be really strong inside. Otherwise, life just rips it away, tears it away, destroys people. And he whispered that in my ear. I have never forgotten that. And I never can take my position seriously. I just say, Stuart, you're here to help people grow. You're here to serve a higher energy in the universe. And also, I can tell you why. I have another story I have about my life. I've been studying with Rudy for 6 years. And I was in Texas running this meditation center there. And he called me up and said, I'd like you to come to New York. I want to get a group of my teachers and students together. I want them all to be here. So I got a plane ticket. I flew to New York. And he said, Stuart, I'm going to upstate New York. I've been invited to teach at a kind of a commune that was up there. And he said, I'd like you to come with me. So one of his students had a license to fly, airplane, 4-seater airplane. So we took off at Teterboro Airport. We were flying for about 10 minutes, and suddenly a fog formed that I could not see 10 feet in front of me. And we were flying through this fog, thinking, well, we're going to this. We hit a mountain. And I was knocked unconscious. When I woke up, the pilot told me that Rudy had passed on, my teacher had passed on in this airplane crash. I tried to give him artificial respiration. I tried anything I could to revive him. When I finally realized that he was gone, that he had taken his samadhi, two things, I was, at the moment we hit the mountain, I was holding his hand, and he was dictating a book to this woman who was sitting in the back seat of the plane. It was a 4-seater plane. And his soul force came into me the moment we hit that mountain. And I knew the only reason that I survived that plane crash is because he put his life inside me. And when I realized he was gone, my first thought is, Stuart, first of all, I just said, I thanked him for allowing me to be with him the last moment of his life, for allowing me to receive that extraordinary blessing that he gave me the last moment of his life. And then I said to myself, Stuart, now you will find out what the future of your life will be. Now you will find out what you have learned in the last 6 years. And if you can take everything you've learned and grow upon it and use it, as a way of nurturing other people, as a way of serving God, of serving a higher force in the universe, and how, the teachings that you got from this person, you'll discover how deeply they went into you and how much work you still have to do on yourself in order to grow inside and stay connected to a higher energy in the universe. I look, and I still do, I look at myself in the mirror, I see a living miracle. I don't have a life. Understand, my life is to serve a higher energy in the universe. How else do you survive a plane crash? It's unbelievable. The plane I used to do pilgrimages up there with students of mine, and the wing was here, and the fuselage was there, and it was all over the side of the mountain, the plane. And, 3 of us walked away. He put his life inside the 3 of us from that crash. And I have never forgotten it. I have ever forgotten it. And it just tells me, Stuart, you can't allow your ego to interfere with what you do. You can't ever allow an opinion you have of yourself to interfere with what you do. You have to do what you were born here to do. And it doesn't matter what kind of crap you got to go through and people's opinions and what they think and all the tension in the world. I said, you have to continue working on yourself and deepening in yourself. And that's where this book I sent you came from. Transforming life's tensions into joy and love.
It's incredible, man. Thanks for sharing that. It's like, how do we start to develop this sense of inner peace that is so important?
Well, it's, look, some people think this is very esoteric, and it is esoteric until you finally start doing it and realize how important it is for your life. We all have inside us a system of energy centers that are called chakras. There's an energy center in the third eye, in the forehead, one in the throat, one in the heart, one right below the navel, one in the sex, the base of the spine, and the crown of the head. There are 7 basic centers in a human being. There are many. There's one in the palm of the hands and the fingertips, and there are a lot of chakras, and also in acupuncture they call it meridians. There are all these energy centers all over the body. The 7 basic ones are the ones I just described. Forehead, throat, heart, right below the navel, sex, base of the spine, and the top of the head. The chakra below the navel, the chakra that the Japanese call the hara, the Chinese call it the tatien. This is the air of power inside a human being. It's the area of rootedness, it's the foundation, and it's the real strength inside a person. And when people study the martial arts, I would say 90% of their training is learning how to get centered there. Because that is the chi, the power, that enables them to be completely in tune with everything around them, and also in tune with a higher energy, that guides them when they're doing whatever they're doing. What I teach is kind of a martial art, but we don't get into a ring and fight with each other. Understand? Life is what we have to learn how to deal with. The tensions of life, the power of life, the energy of life. And when you're centered below the navel, you build chi, you build that kind of power inside yourself. That power, how we see it, look, singers, great singers. If you ever ask them where they sing from that chakra right below the navel. Great dancers, they dance when they're really at the top of their dance performance. They're focused there, and the heart can stay open because we are grounded there inside. The throat can stay open, and the heart and the throat, when they're open, it means we communicate with love, with compassion, with forgiveness. We communicate with patience. We have tolerance. We don't judge other people. We listen to them. The throat chakra is open. The mind is quiet. The brain is. We can receive knowledge that comes from the source of all energy in the universe, infinite energy in the universe. That knowledge will come in. Real knowledge, not thinking, not the IQ, not analyzing and polarity and conflict that goes on in the head all the time. That just creates an enormous amount of tension. But this higher force, it's like there's a great story about Bach, who composed wonderful music many, many centuries ago, and he was dying. And all his students and all his, the whole coterie of people, family, students, they're all lamenting and crying and weeping because he was dying. And they loved him, and they were mourning him. And he looked at them all and he said, "Why are you so upset? Why are you so sad? I'm just going to the place where the music comes from." He was going, and he knew, going to the place from which all knowledge, wisdom, creative energy, the greatest works of art, the greatest works of music, the greatest works of dance, where it all comes from. And it comes because at that particular moment, the dancer was open to receive it, to allow it to guide them in whatever dance. It comes when the writer is open to receive that wisdom that comes out. They have developed the craft of writing a book, and then it can pass through them, and it creates, an incredible painting, a piece of sculpture, music. That energy that comes from the source of all creativity in the universe. We have to be open. The greatest work of art is life itself. And through the use of the mind and the breath, we can build a chakra system that allows that energy to flow through us and create our lives. And we begin to see the world differently. Instead of life being an enemy, life becomes this amazing teacher. We listen to it. Why have I attracted all this negativity? Because something in myself has given off that kind of energy that has attracted it. What do I have to change inside? Not, they pour billions of dollars into fixing the world, and the world is crazier than it's ever been. What do people have to fix inside themselves? that can truly change by fixing themselves. Suddenly the world they see is different. And they can deal with the tension, they can deal with the unhappiness. They don't get thrown off base by it. So this is what it is. I learned how to use the mind. I learned how to use my breath. The mind is the most powerful instrument we have. And through the meditation practice that I learned from my teacher, Rudy, how to bring the attention of the mind, the energy of mind, not the thinking process, but the energy to the chakra that's right below the navel. The mind itself becomes like a surgical instrument, and it opens the very foundation within us. Breath is life. Every time we inhale, we take in life. Every time we exhale, we let go of it. People, 8 billion people are all praying 24 hours a day. They're inhaling and exhaling. Breath is like prayer. It's like life. We take in the breath, then we can use it, the breath, to develop the chakra system, to build and strengthen the chakra system. That gives us a very profound connection with energy that is infinite in the universe. And that energy, we're open enough, that energy that can then guide our lives. Now, honestly, when I was a kid, 9 years I was looking for this. How can I get strong enough? What kind of meditation there was that can... I used to, focus on the third eye. I would listen to my breathing. I would do all those kind of meditations. And none of it, it works for other people. It never worked for me. I needed something to ground myself, to get stronger inside, and to develop a chakra system that gave me the power to stay connected with higher energy in the universe. And I learned that we're born with the tools. We all breathe and we all have minds. We don't have to go shopping for them or even looking for them. They exist inside us. And we just have to learn how to master them, to master the craft and master the tools that we are born with, the mind and the breath, and develop a chakra system that enables us to stay connected with a higher force of energy in the universe. Now, I'm not saying this is an easy thing to do. It's not. And the reason it's difficult to do, we're up against only one person, ourselves. That's why it's hard. We have to master the chaos inside ourselves in order for this process to take place.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. You mentioned purpose. All right, how do we start to find that in our own lives and something that excites us every single day to be on a mission and be of service?
Well, I get up in the morning and I have an enormous amount of responsibility in this world, and it excites me. It gives me a purpose. When I was younger, I didn't have a lot of responsibility and I didn't have a lot of purpose. But now I have students, I teach people all over the world. I constantly with classes, I write books, and this gives life a purpose. There's a reason to get up in the morning and to serve a higher energy. Because, the books that I write, they're all about how to build a system that is capable of serving a higher energy in the universe. I've also written some novels, short stories and stuff like that, but the biggest body. But what I'm saying is, you get up in the morning and there's a reason to spend the day. And the reason isn't, I'm going to the office today just to make money. The reason has to do with a higher purpose. Service in the world, serving a higher principle in the universe, gives your life a purpose. But then to have that kind of reason, a person really needs to build a system inside that is capable of doing it. And in the cosmos, they need people like that to function on. They look for people like that so they can keep sending the knowledge and the wisdom, that a person can use in order to live their life every day and to help nurture other people, in the building also of a chakra system that connects them with God. Now, I always tell my students, Each and every person has their own unique connection with higher energy in the universe. My job is not to create a meditation center full of Stuarts. My job is not to build those kind of people. I would be the first one to leave. I'm not interested in that. My job is to nurture people so they can build their own unique connection with higher energy in the universe. And all I have to do is to help them develop that chakra system. And there are no two people who can experience this in the same way. Each person is completely unique, and each person has their own karma and their own life to live. And each person has to build a system that gives them the capacity to stay open and receive that higher force. They have their own dialogue with God, not my dialogue, their own dialogue with God. My job is to help them get strong enough in order to be involved with that dialogue with God.
I love that. Yeah, it sounds like being of service is really important.
Of course, service, look, think of surrender as letting go, just letting go. It's very, very important. The thing of listening to other people, not being right, not having to defend your rightness. What do other people have to teach me? Even if I think they're wrong, listen, I tell you a great story, right? This is a great story. I was up it was one winter, I was working, I was running a business, I was teaching meditation, I was teaching hatha yoga, I had about 30 things I was doing, living in New York with my teacher, Rudy. And I went to him one day, I said, Rudy, can I go up to the Catskills? He had bought a place up there to use as an ashram. And I'm just exhausted, Rudy. I need to just get a change. He said, no, that's what it's for. Go up there. So I went up there and I found a room and I put all my stuff away. And I said, you can't just sit here all weekend. You got to do something, contribute something. So I looked out the window and there was a yard, maybe about an acre of grass that was probably halfway up to my chest. And there was a tractor there, and attached to it was a mower. And I said, oh, there's something you can do. You can mow the lawn. It needs to be mowed. So I went down, I got on this tractor, and I started driving the tractor, and I'm mowing. I'm having I'm feeling great. My energy's coming back. I'm doing something positive. I'm contributing something. Suddenly, the guy who was the manager of the place, and it was a friend of mine, came running across this place screaming at me. Never forget this. And I had done at least 50 things wrong in the 10 minutes I was in this place. Yeah, so I got off the tractor and I'm standing like nose to nose with him. My usual response was, I would get into a fight with somebody like that. I'd wind up screaming back, who knows what it would lead to. I said, Stuart, no, just listen to him. Listen to him. I didn't dislike this guy. He was a friend of mine, And he stopped up. He went on for 10 minutes. And then he just kind of exhausted himself. And he looked at me and he had tears in his eyes. Gave me a big hug and he said, thank you, Stuart. Thank you. He needed somebody to listen to him. And his tension was the way he got it out of him. Never forget it. Brought tears to my eyes. I said, my God, what a lesson. How many wars would not exist if people would just listen to each other? People would stop fighting with each other, stop knowing better than everybody else, stop having to defend themselves, and just listen. People in the Middle East would just listen to each other. I've been in the Middle East a lot, and you have to listen, and there's something to learn, and it's both sides. And that guy, I'll never forget it, when he had tears in his eyes and he gave me a hug, and all he could say was, thank you, thank you. And then we looked at each other and smiled, and I got back on the tractor and I finished cutting the grass. I mean, I mean, so I think these are such important things, you know, and I think nobody can listen to anybody else if their heart is closed, if they're full of tension, if they know better than everybody else, if they are right all the time. You know, if they can say, okay, what can I learn here? What can this teach me? And listen. I once knew a guy, you
Powerful,
know,
man.
I once knew a guy, he was he had karate black belts, the highest levels, you know, in martial arts. And we're walking down the street one day, and I said to him, I said, you know, I said, the greatest martial artists, the ones that really have developed chi, that power, they will never get into a fight. And he looked at me and he smiled at me. He said, you're right. They never get into fights. Their energy, the chi coming in is so strong that it melts people before the fight can even start. It just melts people. And my teacher, Rudy, when he went through a very difficult time when he was younger, and he went to India, and he was invited with a friend of his to go meet a teacher named Swami Nityananda. And he was very tense, Rudy, and he was told some pretty terrible things that he had to do. And he was on his way going to do them because he thought they would save his life. He was 1 mile from Swami Nityananda's ashram, and all the tension in him dissolved. Everything dissolved. And when he came to the ashram, all he could sit down at the foot of the Swami with his heart open, give him a garland of flowers and say, thank you. The whole tension went away, just dissolved. The chi was so powerful. The ananda was so powerful in the Swami. The love was so powerful coming out of him. The spiritual force coming. It dissolved my teacher Rudy's tension. He was a mile away from him, and it just fell away.
It's incredible, yeah. The power of curiosity is so key, right? And throughout this, he talked a lot about like personal development, like developing yourself to kind of sustain excellence in a sense, like being able to be of service and be on your purpose. It really requires a strong foundation. So how do we start to develop that within ourselves and kind of carry that out to kind of be a light and a model?
Can I tell you honestly, your first name is Anthony, right?
Yeah.
Can I tell you honestly, Anthony, there's an old saying, when the student is ready, the teacher will be there. And then you learn. Then you don't walk away, you learn. When I walked past my teacher's store 500 times, I never went in. The day I walked in his gallery there, I was ready. I was completely ready to find somebody to teach me what you asked. And then it was a matter of learning how to do it. It took years to learn how to do it. But it was a matter of learning how to do it. And I asked my teacher a year after I met him, I said, Rudy, what happened that day when we met? He said, Stuart, I saw you looking in the window of my store. It was like seeing my son lost in the universe. I just pulled you right in the door. When the student is ready, the teacher will be there. And I truly believe this. I used to sit in my teacher's gallery and people would come in and he would say, can I help you with anything? Oh, we're just looking. And this became a metaphor to me for people, they spend their entire life just looking. And the answer could be right in front of them, what they need for their lives, and they're not going to see it, because they're not ready. And I also believe in reincarnation. Sometimes it takes 100 lifetimes just to get ready, to find somebody who, my God, this person can teach me amazing things, but I have to be willing to listen and learn and go through whatever I have to go through in order to learn it. That's how. If somebody comes to me and they're really open to learning this, I can show them how to do it. Then it's a matter if they continue doing it. I can show them how to bring their attention to the chakra below the navel. I can show them how to breathe into the heart chakra and how to open the heart, how to, and the thing that's amazing about all of this is that it's not some great mystery. It's just learning how to use the tools we're born with. But somebody has to be truly ready. They have to be hungry. I mean, I remember Rudy telling me that the world is spiritually malnourished. People are starving to death. Spiritually, it's the biggest epidemic on the planet Earth. Spiritual malnourishment. And yet people don't understand. Everybody knows better. You imagine all the crap I used to, studying with a guru, I became like the black sheep of my family. They all thought I was nuts. And I had to deal with that. They all thought I was crazy. And then, I'll tell you another story, okay? I got a lot of stories. I was studying about 4 years with Rudy. And I went home to a dinner at my aunt's house. I went to my aunt's house for a dinner. And I found out I had a cousin who was dying. She had given like a month to live. She had a very serious cancer. And my aunt came up to me and she said, "You're into all this mumbo jumbo, you're into all this stuff." I said, "Can you do anything to help your cousin?" So I went the next day to my cousin's, hospital room. And she was lying in bed and she looked pretty serious. She had a belly the size of, and she had a very serious cancer, and I asked her, I said, "Do you want to live?" And she said, "Yes." So I started doing a healing meditation I learned from my teacher with her. 3 weeks later, the cancer was in total remission, and she walked out of the hospital. She kept running around the ward of the hospital telling everybody, "You got to get my cousin to do this with you." It's unbelievable. So she got out of the hospital. I went and saw her and I said, "Look, I'm living in Texas. Why don't you come down there, and stay there for 6 months, and I'll teach you this. And you'll be able to use it." "Oh, no, I have a husband, I have children. How can I go to Texas? What am I going to do there?" It just broke my heart because I knew what. A year later, she died. I pleaded with her. I said, "Come." I wrote a book called, people should read this book, called Leah, A Story of Meditation and Healing. And it has an introduction by Richard Gere, this book. And Alan Arkin wrote a blurb for it, but a bunch of people, promoted it. And it's all about a 13-year-old kid who had cancer. Was told that she had 3 weeks to live by the doctors. And it goes through the whole process of healing that I took this young girl through in the book. And so what I'm trying to say is, I was the black sheep of the family. And then all of a sudden, about 6 months later, my mother calls me up. "Can I come study with you?" I couldn't believe it. My mother came to my meditation class. Imagine working out karma. It was absolutely extraordinary. She came to my meditation. She started coming to my meditation classes. And they didn't want to mention my name for years in my family. I was the crazy one. And all of a sudden, these things started. I grew to where I could embrace that. I could sit there with my mother in a meditation class and help her overcome the problems she had inside herself. So when a student is ready, the teacher will be there. And I mean this. And these aren't just words. These are profound truth. When they're ready, the teacher will manifest and be there.
Wow. Yeah, being willing to listen is key. All right, Stuart, this has been amazing. I really appreciate you coming on the show today, sharing your story with us, all your insights, and how important it is to develop a meditation practice, right? Really working on our purpose and being of service. And from there, we can kind of develop ourselves to be a light and a model for other people, man. So thank you again so much for coming on the show. It's been an honor. So if people would like to get connected with you and your work, where can we find you?
My book that you have, there, they can get it on Amazon. They can get it at Barnes and Noble. They can get it at Walmart. It's now in a Kindle version, which you can get on Amazon. Uh, uh, it's going to be in an Audible version soon too. The book. Um, I have a website, stuartperrin.com, STUARTPERRIN.com. A lot of the stuff I teach is on there. People can see all the books I've written. They can order them through the website. Um, uh, I've done 1,400 videos that are on YouTube and Facebook. 1,400 of them. After every class, I always answer questions and give a talk. And my students started downloading these on YouTube and Facebook, and we started an Instagram page under my name, and they can go there. There's a lot of ways people can get in touch with me. I'm readily available. Look, to be honest with you, I don't even have a fee for people coming to my classes. I teach class on Zoom. 7 classes a week are being taught on Zoom. I don't ask for money. I say, yeah, I have to live. I say people should donate whatever they can afford to donate. And there are 7 classes a week that are, and I have classes for people that in Europe, in the Middle East, in Brazil, South America, Mexico come. So I'm readily available. If people want to find me, man, there's no trouble. And everybody's welcome, If somebody tells me they want to come to my class, I tell one of my students to get in touch with them, and they set up a Zoom session. And the student will teach them the breathing exercise so they can attend the class. So YouTube, Facebook, Zoom. I teach something that's 500,000 years old, using all this modern stuff to do it. It's very interesting.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome, Anthony. Thank you for having me.